Digest. I am your host tonight, Jim Delfino. And folks, if Craig Breslow makes one more trade this week, I'm going to need OSHA to issue a workplace fatigue warning because the man hasn't slept since Halloween. Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to keep up with the transaction log like I'm a dad trying to understand TikTok. Every time my phone buzzes, I don't know if it's a weather alert, a national emergency, or Breslow flipping another pitcher for a prospect with his name that looks like a CAPTCHA test. Let's be honest. I'm the perfect host for the show because my reaction to these trades is basically the same as Jaron Duran tracking a fly ball. Absolute confusion followed by blind optimism. I read Joingston Garcia and immediately thought my browser had a stroke. Yet here I am acting like I knew who he was before today. I did, nodding like a Yankees analyst pretending to understand analytics. Joining me tonight is Thayer Doyle, the only man alive who insists he loves the fundamentals, yet spent yesterday trying to convince me Johan Oviedo is secretly the Dominican Greg Maddux. Thayer played college ball, but he thinks every trade should be evaluated using grit, buntability, and whether the guy looks good in stirrups. Meanwhile, Breslow's over here building a pitching lab like he's auditioning for the next Marvel movie. Let's get into it. Your Boston Red Sox are treating the offseason like a gladiator pit. The AL East is the Thunderdome right now. The Jays are doing Jays things, the Orioles are doing smart things, and the Yankees, well, the Yankees are tweeting we're exploring options, which is code for Hal is counting pennies. And the Sox, they've now made 2 trades for starting pitching in less than 2 weeks. Sonny Gray and now Johan Oviedo. Someone check Breslow's basement for a potion cauldron. So the big trade, the Red Sox and Pirates complete a 5-player swap. The Boston Red Sox receive, again, Johan Oviedo, right-handed pitcher, 6'6", with back-end starter stuff, but please don't let his arm fall off again. We also send Tyler Samaniego, who is a left-handed lottery ticket, and Adonis Guzman, who is a reliever, supposedly with upside. That's who we get. Excuse me. We got Oviedo, we got Samaniego, and Guzman. Pittsburgh receives in this deal the passer Garcia, top 10 pitching prospect, Jesus Travieso, a young arm, and I think there's another player in that deal. In any event, Oviedo posted a 3.57 ERA in a lot of limited time in 2025. He did miss 2024 completely with injury. In 2023, he threw 177 and a third innings with a 4.31 ERA. And there, he led all of baseball with 13 hits batsmen. So just want to bring that into play. I'm sure you were going to talk about that. Back-end starter, big frame, enough upside to make the nerds drool. In another classic Breslow move, find a guy who once showed promise, pray the biomechanics lab can turn him into the Dominican Garrett Cole. Meanwhile, the Pirates get Garcia, a dude who hits AAA pitching and then turns into Semtex when he gets to Boston. 1 hit in 5 MLB games. Typical story, but hey, he's only 22. The Pirates are going to ruin him anyway. What this trade really means, this isn't a one-off move. This is Breslow sending the league a message. We are not participating in the hot stove. We are trying to win the damn thing. Again, Boston still linked to Pete Alonso, Munitaka Murakami, and Kyle Schwarber, which we'll talk a little about later. Thayer, I want to open this up. What are your thoughts and reactions to this move with the Pirates?
Confusion. I'm kind of confused that the Red Sox seem to be doing the right thing. As we went into the offseason market, I didn't want to really spend a lot of money on pitching because I didn't think the starting pitching, like guys like Cease, were not going to be worth the money that they got. The Blue Jays went out and got Cease. I think they probably overpaid for him. We get Sonny Gray. We get Oviedo. I was looking for them to improve their team, offensively in free agency. That's where I think the opportunities are, and to improve your team pitching-wise through trades, which is what they're doing. I'm still worried that it's kind of 3, 4, 5 pitching that they're bringing in as opposed to that 1A or 2 guy. I'm still interested in Ryan. I need them to make that move for us. But Oviedo is an interesting character. He has a lot of potential. I don't think he's going to amount to anything more than a 3 or 4. He's probably, Pittsburgh's version of Brian Bayo, a guy with a lot of potential. Will he get there? It unfortunately it is another sort of it has the sort of scent of a Red Sox move where let's get a guy who's coming off an injury. Thankfully, in this case, he's pitched last year, so it's not someone who is going to be sitting around and we're going to be paying him to rehab. But I gotta say, I like the move. Password got a lot of acclaim, but he doesn't have a place in our outfield for the near future, so he can go. The young pitcher is an A-ball guy. We have been speaking about it at odds ends about how inefficient the Red Sox organization is at developing pitching. So I'm not too worried about that. He could be a star for Pittsburgh, but chances are if he had stayed with us, he wouldn't have been anything. I do worry about Oviedo's lack of control. He is young. Perhaps that'll develop. But like you said, he does hit a lot of guys and he does walk people. That's something to be afraid of. But at the same time, you're improving your pitching staff, at least that depth that they keep talking about. I think we're better off now if he is in the rotation than probably any of the guys that they talked about earlier in the season. So we'll see. These are all moves that I feel are part of a big picture. The question is, and this is where the Red Sox have failed us in the last couple years since Dombrowski left, is really completing the portrait. They get the outline, they get a lot of those sort of superfluous details in there, but they don't bring out the true beauty of the portrait that we need by getting into the true masterpiece. Bring me Ryan, bring me something like that. I don't need these other fluff things. Are going to be nice. They will be important pieces in the development of the team if they surround them with talent.
Well, I think the biggest thing that concerns me about Oviedo, and I posted on Twitter, I says, "Is this a good move?" was my tweet, because it's been my argument for many years that the Red Sox have gone in the direction of trying to find dumpster fire, diamonds in the rough, whether it be guys that used to be like your Corey Klubers, guys that never were, and guys that they just hope are going to come back from some sort of injury and be either an amazing find, or they're going to be able to put them in their pitching lab and get them corrected. And unfortunately, this has been what I consider to be a failure since 2019. And I don't need to bore you with the names, but Garrett Richards, James Paxton, Pablo, not Pablo, but Sandoval. I keep saying him. The list goes on and on. And my concern with this is that Giolito's another one. They sign these guys to bring them in. Liam Hendricks, I can go on and on. And if you really take everything in a vacuum, they have spent a significant amount of wasted money trying again to, pick up, walk over dollars to pick up dimes. And it has failed them time and time again. They haven't even had one significant guy outside of Giolito's last season, but you had to pay him because he was injured twice. So I don't understand why they keep going in this direction when it probably would be cheaper and more cost effective for them to go out and sign some pitcher that is going to have some term. Now, people argue with me all the time on Twitter. Oh, would you have wanted Dylan Cease? They overpaid for him. That's not, it doesn't have to be him. The problem with a lot of people online is when you use a reference, and I'll reference Cease, Everybody has a one-track mind, and it's got to be him. No, it doesn't have to be him. It doesn't have to be the guy that the other guy the Blue Jays got, the reliever. You know, it's someone like that. And when I say like that, I mean identify and find someone with term. Either trade for them and extend them, or something like you did with Crochet. They identified Crochet was a top of the line ace starting pitcher, even without the track record. They traded two high end prospects for him, and they wound up getting him and extending him. And that's what I want the Red Sox to do. I don't want them, and this is the other thing that really bothers me, and I don't want to forget to say this. Everybody will come at me and say, yeah, but you gave up virtually nothing. You gave up Fitz, you gave up, a middling prospect and so forth. But what people don't understand is that you gave up nothing because you acquired that nothing in the first place. You went and made a trade with the Yankees and got Fitz, who was a nothing burger then. And now you've got him, and now you've got to flip him. You got some of these other guys that were nothing burgers because you traded nothing for nothing, and now you got to get nothing again. And you can't keep doing that and expecting different results. So there is some upside to this kid. I get it. But I really worry because it's the typical coming off an injury situation. And is he going to be a guy that you're going to be able to plug into this rotation? Because time and time again, it doesn't go that way. Your thoughts on that?
First of all, I love that saying that you have walking over dollars to get dimes. Every time you say it, it's fantastic because it's truly what the Red Sox do. They kind of overlook that sort of piece that's right there. And I agree. I'm nervous about what they're doing simply because of the track record of the front office of late. I'd like, I'm not one to really subscribe to the idea that, we're playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers and our guys are smarter. I I almost feel it's the other way around sometimes, that we're playing checkers and everyone else is playing chess. But I agree with your point that they don't necessarily have the Cease in particular. I don't think that's going to be a contract that's going to be beneficial to the Blue Jays. Just Cease has never impressed me as a guy that's a number one and number two. He's always kind of been a 3, 4, 5 guy who has flashes of brilliance, but doesn't have the makeup and the stuff to carry a season. And so I agree with that piece, but I understand your term piece. When you think about, having a number 3 pitcher that has term, something like that makes a lot of sense. If Sonny Gray, he's older, if he had a couple years in it, that would be worth it. But now you're basically getting him for a 1-year rental. And in order for that to be effective, Fitz has to just be an also range as well. And you're taking the chance that your ability to really get down and dirty into the analytics of the whole thing and judge your talent is better than the others. And I'm not sure that's truly the case with their pitching, to the point where, like you said, they'll nothing from nothing leaves nothing. We traded nothing to get Fitz, but we also did we get nothing for him? So we're still stuck with nothing. It kind of goes back to the Renfroe trade that, we talked about a long time. He got nothing, he cost you nothing to get the guy. He has a monster season, and here's an opportunity to turn him into something, and we bring back absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and that's obviously on the hitting side of things, but a lot of people on Twitter talking that we have the longest and a great starting pitching depth. And I question, when you start talking to me about depth, I start having to look from a standpoint of saying, well, these guys have got to be on the 40-man roster somehow. You can't have 14, 15 starting pitchers on the 40-man roster. It's just not going to work. So, are the Hunter Dobbins of the world, are the Connolly Earleys of the world, are the Peyton Tolleys of the world, are these just guys that, Red Sox Twitter and, social media online just get enamored with, or are they really going to be something? Because as far as I'm concerned, the jury's out on all these guys. And we can look at the other side of the diamond too, with the hitting, with the Marcelo Mayers and the Campbells and so forth. I said to somebody the other day, I said, if Dave Dombrowski was still on this team, running this organization, I said, I guarantee you Casas would have been traded. I guarantee you Campbell would have been traded, Mayer would have been traded, and we probably would have had another championship. And this guy was like, well, he decimated the minor league system. And to which I always say, what trade do you want back? Because there is not one trade he made that you would say, oh my God, what did we do that for? So the upside of this kid, he's only had one full season. He made 32 starts in 2023 as a 25-year-old. He was 9-14 with a 4.31. I even with the win-loss, it is Pittsburgh. I'm not going to crush him for that. I am concerned with the 13 hits by hits batsman. Reminds me of Major League. He throws at his own son in a father-son game. But in any event, 177 and 2/3 innings, 161 hits. So he did throw up 100, almost close to 180 innings. So I like that aspect about him. As far as his pitch repertoire, it looks like he's got 5 pitches. He's got a 4-seamer that he will use about 37% of the time, a slider 32% of the time. Then it drops down dramatically. He's got a curveball for 15%, a sinker for 9%, and a changeup for about 5%. His average fastball was 95 and a half. And his opponent batting average on the fastball was 149. So there is some things to like in that area. And his whiff rate on the fastball was over 30%.
Absolutely. He's got abilities. And I think that's kind of what they're looking for. They're looking for upside, trading away what they did, hoping that they sort of catch that diamond in the rough. And like I said, I don't mind it. I'd rather have, I hate to say it, I'd rather sort of steal somebody else's pitching because we can't develop it ourselves. So password is, I'd like to say a dime a dozen, but we don't have right-handed outfielders other than Rafaela. But you can replace him much easier than you can replace a pitcher. So to
Absolutely.
bring in someone with that potential, it's the right move. I can't say it any other way. They've done the right thing in this case. If it turns out, like a disaster, oh well. At least they're being aggressive with their stuff, and that's kind of what I'm most impressed with, is that Breslow is being aggressive. He's going out. He's, if nothing else, he's identifying players that he wants in situations that he can make moves with, and is getting it done.
Yeah, no, I agree to that point too. And I would rather trade, hitters for pitching every day because, when you are going to go and want something that's premium, a premium pitcher, a premium hitter, what do other teams always want? They want pitching. They want a catcher. I think that's what the other guy in my monologue, I forgot to mention, we did acquire a catcher out of that. So I think that's the 65th catcher we got this offseason. But again, pitching and catchers are something that teams will want. So, I'm just wondering if there's another trade that is going to come out of this. But to your point earlier, about not minding the trade, I think if we already had Joe Ryan or somebody of a better caliber than Brian Bayo locked in at number 2, and then Sonny Gray was your 3, Bayo was your 4, and you made a trade for this guy as your potential 5, I'd have absolutely zero problem with it. The problem that I have is he's arbitration eligible. He's coming off an injury. So we'll see what happens. There is some upside, but like you said, can he get back to form and be a guy that can pitch 32 games, 32 starts again? That remains to be seen. He's young enough, so hopefully he will be. He's a big kid, 6'6", 275.
Mhm.
So I mean, he's not a small kid. So
Yeah, and to
we'll-
your point about, if this move happened after a Joe Ryan move, that we would feel much better about it. That kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, that they're sort of outlining their portrait, and now they need to fill it in. From the standpoint of just thinking as a general manager and as a front office person, sometimes your negotiations are dependent upon sort of the leverage that you feel you have and the opponent feels you have. If the Twins are looking at you with, oh, you only have Brian Bayo now, all right, guess what the price is? I know you're going to have to pay to get this guy. Now, if we can say, oh, we have Bayo behind Crochet, plus we have Sonny Gray behind Crochet, and we have Oviedo behind Crochet, when you're sitting at the negotiations table, it's a little easier to say, no, I'm not going to give you that guy because I have these other ones and I can go somewhere else. Will it work? Who knows? But it does give the Red Sox a little bit more leverage in making these deals. But this is where they have fallen short over the last 5 to 8 years, pulling the trigger on that one. All right, you've done all the right moves to sort of stabilize and scaffold your team. Now it's time to really get at the meat of it. And can they do it? That's where
yeah,
I hold the question.
yeah. I mean, what you're basically describing is for them to, be, negotiating from a position of strength, and that's essentially what they have not been able to do since Dombrowski left.
Yep.
And I mean, it's clear. I don't think it's arguable that Breslow is somebody who has more balls than Chaim Bloom ever did and ever will, because that was the biggest fault with Bloom, was making bad decisions or no, and his decisions were to not make a decision is really
Right.
what it amounted to. And we can go back to Justin Turner, where we could have traded him for one of the Miami pitchers, Edwin. I forgot his last name, but the rumors were out that that was a potential trade, and he held on to him and JD Martinez a little too long, and so forth. So we'll see how that goes from there. Switching gears a little bit, I want to kind of talk a little bit about some other rumors that are still out there. We did talk about these on the last show, but some updated things. Pete Alonso, still the front runner for Boston's big bat splash. Multiple outlets are still linking Alonso to the Red Sox as their primary option for a middle of the order bat. Boston's front office reportedly favors Alonso over other big bats because he's right handed and he's a slugger whose power plays well at Fenway. It also says that he's open to DH duty or obviously first base. So he does give the Red Sox some flexibility in that regard. Thayer, he's my number one Christmas list guy. I think he makes all the sense in the world for this team. He's right-handed. He's a guy that's going to put up 30 to 40 home runs consistently. He plays 162 games a year. You can insert him right into the middle of that lineup behind Anthony, and that's a guy that can be replacing Rafael Devers from the right side for 4 or 5 years. And I think it makes sense for the Red Sox who don't want to commit 9 and 10 year deals. Your thoughts on Alonso?
Coming around on Alonso, he kind of has Dave Kingman vibes for me. Now, granted, I don't watch the Mets all that much, but he just feels like a guy who is known for the home run derby. And yes, he can bang you 40, but he's going to hit, 210. And that's not necessarily what I look for. But at the same time, we need an offensive weapon from the right side. I think I'd rather have, like I've said before, I think I'd rather have a Bichette. I'd rather have, Marte, who's a switch hitter, have one of those guys at a more premier position that are going to, but they don't, at the same time, they don't have that frightening power potential that he does. So how could I would so much rather have Alonso sort of be my 5-6 hitter instead of my 3-4. Like if I could say, all right, I'm going to have Anthony, and then I'm going to have Bichette, and then throw me a Garcia, then you can throw in. I'll feel a little bit more comfortable, but I understand from a financial standpoint that's not a reality. But with the way the things are looking, and like I've said before, that I think money spent on Alonso is better money spent than money spent on Cease. So if they're going to spend the money, spend it on you'll get more for your money, I think, from Alonso than you would Cease or one of the other starting pitchers. So I'm fine with it.
Next up is the ongoing Kyle Schwarber saga. Still in the mix, but second tier to Alonso. Schwarber remains a legitimate candidate, but according to internal chatter, he's now more of a fallback option if Boston misses out on Alonso. The potential downside for Boston, signing Schwarber carries a cost, both financial and positional. He's a DH only, which could complement how they deploy the lineup. I think he's more at this point of his career a cool story than actually an identifiable answer to a problem. And unfortunately, the Red Sox are not going to, in my mind, move Yoshida to open up that spot. And so while I'd want him here, the metrics and optics just don't work for the money. He's left handed, he's a DH. We've got one of those, but ours can't hit. Your reactions?
I completely agree. I'm shocked that Schwarber hasn't been locked up in Philadelphia already. He sort of just seems like he was perfect for that town, and especially with all the rumors that were coming out earlier about Harper and how they kind of burned the bridges with that. I don't know. Granted, they still have him locked up, but to have a disgruntled Harper and then lose Schwarber, I think it's turned out the lights if you're in Philadelphia. So I don't understand that one. And another piece, and I know it's just sort of online fodder and hot stove talk, but when they mentioned Schwarber having interest in going to the Reds, I sort of like, oh, okay, go to the Reds and be irrelevant. It's sort of
Mhm.
how I look at it. That's sort of we've been having discussions like this for years, where when you hear that from a player, he now comes off your list because they're no longer interested in winning. They're simply interested in the cash and being safe. And those are the guys that in the past never succeeded in these sort of big market places. Schwarber, on the other hand, is someone who has, which makes it very shocking that if he went there. Now, I'm not going to sort of, you know, sort of get on him before it happens. But if he were to go to Cincinnati, I would really be disappointed in him doing something like that.
Yeah, I think the only reason why is because he's from Ohio, so I think it's just a matter of location than anything.
You can
Um,
want to go home, but you're still going to suck.
yeah,
So, you can have so much money you could fly home anytime you wanted.
yeah. I mean, the Reds had a pretty decent season. I think adding a bat like his, may not be, such a bad thing, but I understand where you're coming from through baseball irrelevance and, being with the Cubs, being with the Red Sox, being with Philly, and having, merciless fans in all three locations. It is kind of a surprise that, that would go anywhere more than that. Next up, more starting pitching. They're not done yet. Even after acquiring Johan Oviedo from the Pirates and already grabbing Sonny Gray, analysts expected Boston to try and add another frontline or mid rotation starter. One name being floated in connection with Boston is again Joe Ryan, a former Sox target, and that chatter has picked up again recently. We've talked about this. I mean, I think we've been beating a dead horse here. Here's another trade option that I think might be interested, and we'll. I'm just going to flip to the next one because it involves him. Jaron Duran still viewed as a potential trade bait. Without fielder roster congestion tightening, Duran remains the most common mentioned name on the block among analysts, especially if Boston lands Alonso or Schwarber. He becomes an attractive piece to flip for either pitching or roster balance. I would package Duran in some sort of deal with Kansas City to acquire Reagans and Pasquantino if you don't get Alonso. I think that would make for a good old fashioned baseball trade. Getting your number two starter in here in Reagans, getting your first baseman who can hit and hit with power, that is relatively cost controlled, which is something the Red Sox will very much like. It won't cost them much in terms of their financial output for 2026. They won't be locking anybody up in a long term, high dollar value AAV contract. I think it makes a lot of sense. What's your reaction to that trade proposal?
I agree. I'm a fan of Reagan's. I think he would benefit coming to Boston. The Pasquantino thing is a nice aspect to it. I think you're going to have to throw in a little bit more than just Duran and someone else. You're probably talking three
Yeah,
or four guys
but
because
I
you're
would do
looking.
it.
Yeah, it depends what they want for him. Again, because we talked about if you're trading for Pasquantino, you're now locking up your first base with another left-handed hitter. So you need to find a right-handed bat somewhere. That may put Alonso out of the running for you if you do that sort of thing. And you're still stuck with Yoshida as your left-handed DH, so you're still left-handed predominant, which I'm not a big fan of. But I like the idea. I know I've heard people talk about Bubik and stuff like that. I want no part of that. He's coming off of rotator issues. I'd take a Tommy John recoverer 10 out of 10 times over a rotator cuff. The science of the shoulder, it just does not recover. So anyone with shoulder issues, we've kind of seen that in the past. The shoulder is the kiss of death, not the Tommy John. So I'd do it in a minute. I think they do need to trade Duran this offseason. They need to, like we've talked about assets. He is an asset that is diminishing the longer this goes on because he's not going to have a place in Fenway. So they need to get him off the team as soon as possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I take a lot of heat on Twitter because everybody says, why would you want to trade your best offensive player? That's because you just created a roster that's the situation that has presented itself. It's not that he's your best offensive player because you don't have enough anywhere else. That's really what it boils down to. And
Mm-hmm.
it really boils down to as one of your better trade baits, you can maybe acquire something that you would have not have been able to get with anybody else on your team at this point. So, you have to give something. I don't want to say give something good to get something good because I don't really consider Jaron Durant to be good. He's okay, but he's not a long term solution here. He's got, I think, 2 more years under team control, and they're not going to sign him to a long term deal as he gets into his mid 30s and he doesn't have the speed that he once did. He's going to have to turn around to more power, and I don't think he's going to develop enough and keep his batting average high because he can't do it now. And make no mistake, he's lost his leadoff job. I mean, it's Roman Anthony's now. And to put him in the middle of the lineup or even somewhere before the seventh hole, I think is, malpractice because he's just not that prototypical type of hitter.
No,
So
he's
we'll,
not.
so we'll see how that rolls out, which also then brings you back to old friend Alex Bregman. Uncertainty around Alex Bregman could push Boston further into that free agent trade market. Bregman remains unsigned. This uncertainty keeps the Red Sox active in the hunt for power bats and reinforcements, with Boston evaluating other options. If Bregman walks or signs elsewhere, this could ramp up urgency to land a bat like Alonso or Schwarber, or even explore veteran alternatives. I'll tell you what I would do. If you don't want to go the Reagans and Pasquantino route, I would definitely see what they could do to get Kettle Marte from the Arizona Diamondbacks. You put him at second base, you lock that up for, I think he's got 3 or 4 years left on
Yep.
that large contract. He's a right-handed bat. He's a switch, actually, isn't he?
Yes.
And so he's going to give you that right-sided bat when you need it. It's going to stop this revolving door at second base. And then if you want to put Merritt third and take a shot at him there, we know the glove is there. We have no concerns about the glove. We'll get our offense out of second, which basically replaces the throughput that you'd get out of Bregman anyway, even if you had a Romy Gonzalez at second. So now it gives Mayer a chance to, this is your position, own it and go from there.
Exactly. And it also, it brings in youth. It brings in, I'm all for that piece. And also from that same point, as we were talking about with the trade for Joe Ryan, when you have leverage now in negotiations with Bregman, if you say, hey, I'm good. I have someone to play second. I now have a third baseman. Go see what you can find. Here's our offer. Go on, have fun. Come back to us if you want. And that might be, hey, he comes back on another short-term deal. And I do not want to pay him 5, 6, 7, 8 years,
No.
but a 1, 2, 3 year deal now. Granted, I think he's going to get a longer extension from somewhere else, but a Bregman, Marte, I don't think you're going to be able to pay all those guys. Alonso and Story infield is a very inviting one. But at the same time, I think Bregman's time in Boston is probably over.
I would think so too. Unless there's been some conversation where he's going to try again, and if he fails, come back, like you said. But I mean, if you re-examine last offseason, so a year ago now, when Bregman was out there, and he was coming off a fair final season with the Houston Astros, and now you fast forward to this year with that injury, with the 200 batting average that he had after he came back from that injury, and the fact that he wasn't running good and so forth, I just don't see any GM coming to the plate and offering him a 5-year deal. If anything, it's probably going to be another pillow contract for another year. I just don't see it. That's why it really makes it really, I know Boris is Boris, and stranger things could happen. Some team might get an injury. He seems like he might be one of those guys that might weigh this out, as far as they can, almost maybe into late February, March. I think that's
Like
when
he
he
did
signed.
last year.
Yeah, I think he signed in February with us. But they're going to look for the potential of a potential injury somewhere, and then a team is going to be scampering for his services, because as of right now, I look up and down the American and National League. I don't think there's any team that is in dire straits for Alex Bregman. So that being said, the Red Sox are the only ones that could use an established third baseman right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
Unless the Tigers would be the only other ball club, I think, that would potentially, like, they need him. They need his leadership. They are very much in the same situation as the Red Sox, who could
He's a
have used
fit
that
there.
leadership piece, but I don't think they're going to spend that money.
He's a fit there, but which again bears the question why they didn't do it last year.
Right.
So, that's my question on how that's going to turn out. So we'll see. Moving over to see on some of the chats. We got a couple there. Go Boston. And a couple of the other Japanese guys as well. There is also some talk. What's the name escapes me right now? The guy from Japan that's the first baseman.
Yeah,
Dude,
it's not Morikawa.
Let's see here. Kazuma Okamoto. Is that what his name is?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see here. He's 29, 327 with 15 home runs and 49 RBIs in 69 games this year for the Yomiuri Giants. He injured his left elbow trying to catch a throw at first in May when he collided with another player. He's a 6-time All-Star. He has a 277 average, 248 home runs, and 717 RBIs in 11 seasons. I mean, it's just a guy, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think he's anything that's going to really, break the bank on that. But you know, be interesting to see.
But you
Um,
also have to think about that the Asian market, especially Japan, is a very powerful tool, and we saw it as soon as Matsuzaka came. The talent from the Far East that came our way, Okojima, you know, we started to bring
well, look
in
at
those
Otani.
talents.
Look at
Yep,
Otani now. Yeah.
yep. We so having those sort of players can bring people for you. You know, it's an important piece, and it's not something that should be overlooked. You really get talking about getting the most for your dollar. They would they would bring in not only sort of the viewership, but traveling and just the marketing aspect of having sort of one of Japanese favorite sons on their team goes a long way.
Yeah, Robert Little here says I think they should pass on Alonso inside Okamoto and trade for Marte. I mean, if you go out and get Marte, then you can go ahead and sign a guy like that because he's certainly going to be attractive to the Red Sox in the standpoint that they wouldn't have to give up, $150 million for a player. Um, and I'm a big Marte guy. I like that. I like the switch hitting that he offers you. He's good defensively. He would slot in very good there as your number two hitter, in my opinion. So you'd have Anthony batting leadoff from the left side. Then depending on your pitching, he's going to bat second from the right or the left, and then you go from there. So I mean, that's a good 1-2 punch in my mind. So it will be interesting to see how that goes.
The piece to this, and this is my concern with the Red Sox, is I think you have a limited amount of opportunities from trading and free agent standpoint. I
Mhm.
think they have one more good trade left in them. I don't think you can get Ryan and Marte. So if I'm looking at this, do I want Marte and say Okamoto in my infield? Now I have Story. We don't bring Bregman back, and we have um, Mayer playing third base. You go with your outfield. I don't know if they're going to bring anyone in. So you have, you know, Rafaela still in center field. You have Anthony in left field. Probably Abreu still, unless they trade him. Um, Now, is that better with the current pitching staff, where your number two right now is Bayo, and then you have Gray, and then you have Oviedo, and then door number five? Or are you better making the trade to get Ryan? And now you're sitting with Crochet, Ryan, Gray, Bayo, Oviedo, and then you sign your first baseman. You sign, you know, anybody you want. Alonso, you can bring him in. You can almost bring in, Okamoto. Figure out third base because there's another Japanese third baseman. So maybe you sign the Alonso, you bring in the Japanese third baseman. Now you have Mayer playing second base with Story, and you have your outfield. Are you better there, or are you better the other way around? Personally, I would, after watching what I've seen, I think this team, if you throw Crochet, Ryan, and then have Gray, you're a better team than if you just have the offense.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's the old adage that good pitching beats good hitting, right? So, I mean, you can maybe identify one more pitcher that you need to get to slot before Bayo if you're not moving him. And then, you might be able to go a little bit softer on the lineup, just knowing that you've got the better pitching. Just to kind of shore up the rest of the evening, Cooper Criswell, who we originally got from the Tampa Bay, he was DFA'd after all the trade with Oviedo, and the Mets have claimed him. And I did tweet out that I kind of hated this move. The Red Sox stockpiling pitching. I think they were trying to DFA him and see if he would make it through, which obviously he didn't. He was a decent guy for us in terms of when he had to make spot starts. He never really was a guy that, you know, he kept you in the ball game there. I mean, pretty much every start, I think he had one or two that were a little suspect. But for the most part, he was a guy that we could rely on. It's too bad he didn't get a better shot.
I agree, but at the same time, he's a decent guy. He's decent. We're the Boston Red Sox. Decent belongs in other areas. Yes, I liked him. Yes, he was the better of the journeyman people that we threw out there when we didn't have the appropriate pitching rotation. But at the same time, it's kind of like, we talk about your comments about stepping over dollars to get dimes. There's no reason to keep a dime when you have a dollar sitting out there. And
No,
that's what.
I agree. I just figured with all the shuffle that they were doing around that maybe Criswell would have been a little bit of a better piece to keep in a potential trade scenario down the road versus some of the other guys that we have. But we'll see how that goes. Just last on the list tonight is just a quick one from about Bo Bichette. 3 hours ago, it was written here that the Red Sox are still being connected to Bo Bichette again. This time it's Ken Rosenthal and Will Salmon. Uh, Retaining third baseman Alex Bregman is a priority for the Boston Red Sox, but some with the club view Bo Bichette, previously division rival with Toronto Blue Jays, as an intriguing alternative. And based on his age and offensive profile, you have to explore this. I brought this up much, I think, before even the season was over. I said, let's just kind of like table Alex Bregman and go after Bichette. He would be a great alternative too in that second spot if you didn't want to go after a Marte or, maybe even play third. I don't know how that might handle out. Your reactions.
Completely agree. That's what I've been talking about. Like, he would have been my number one priority from a free agent standpoint, is bringing in Bichette over Alonso or any of the other bats, to play that premium position, whether it's shortstop or second base. I think that's where they'd be dollars well spent. So yes, if there's an option, I would love for them to get Bo Bichette.
Would you rather sign Bo Bichette as a free agent for a multi-year deal, or would you rather trade for Marte?
I think, again, I like I've been talking about, I think the trade market for pitching is where the Red Sox need to live and spend their money on offense. So I would rather pay for Bichette and trade for Ryan than trade for Marte and sign. I know they went Framber Valdez.
Correct. Yeah, I got
I
you.
would much rather go Bichette Ryan than vice versa.
Yep. Last comment from Robert. Twins said today they're not trading Ryan, so that's an interesting thing, especially with the way that they kind of did a sell-off and the July deadline. So, it probably just still remains to be seen, but we'll see where that goes from there. Any last minute things before we wrap up?
No, I think it's been like we've talked about. It has been engaging. This is the first real off season in quite a few years where it's not been interest kings all the way. The Red Sox are doing something, and whether we disagree with it or we think Sonny Gray isn't as good, the fact is the Red Sox are doing something to keep us interested and to keep us talking about them, which is something that I think, not often to do this, Breslow deserves praise for that he's keeping the Red Sox and their fans involved in everything that's going on in the winter, which is important.
Yeah, I mean, he's been probably arguably the busiest executive so far in Major League Baseball with the moves that he's made. So, we'll see how it pans out. I know I've given him some gruff, and other people have too. But let's see where this goes. Give it a little bit more time, but at least we're pleasantly surprised with some of the moves that are going on and the fact that something is happening. But at the end of the day, I still want two more bats and one more pitcher. And I think if we go and acquire that, whoever those guys may be at the end of the day, I think, you're probably in a pretty good position from that point.
Agreed.
That's going to do it for tonight. I'd like to thank Thayer for being on with me. And please go to our website at redsoxdigest.com. Get a free subscription there. During the season, we go ahead and give a breakdown of every game on every day. Articles sent directly to your inbox. no charge at all. You can go ahead and donate to our cause if you'd like. If not, that's fine too, but we'd appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you on the